7 episodes left, Dan.
God, that's awesome. I mean, I'm sorry.
Meanwhile, our fans are crying.
With joy, yeah.
Welcome to Damnit Jim, the podcast. A fun and fascinating look at the very influential Star Trek, the original series. My name is Dana Smith, and I am proud to be your navigator, and I should point out, recently promoted navigator to lieutenant commander. And with me, as always, the rear admiral of typos, my good friend, Dan Calzaretta.
You're a bastard, Dana. That's all I got to say. It was a typo. Dana, it was a freaking typo.
Well, I pointed something out to you earlier from, I got an email from DU, Denver University, and they sent out an email for their, their sports division or something, and it had 2 typos in the subject line. It was the Denver Difference Campaign launch.
So it should have said the Denver Difference Campaign. Is that what it's supposed to say?
Yeah. I thought it was, spam or something at first. And then I went down and found that they spelled it correctly in the body. And that just happens sometimes. But I mean, that's a big, huge organization.
Do you think they did it on purpose to get your attention, to look at the email? Maybe.
But you think they would have said something in the body like, hey, we got your attention.
When I made that typo on Whom Gods Destroy, yeah, that was the number 1 episode as far as comments. But hey, the big news is you got a promotion.
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought about going all the way up to vice admiral or something, surpassing you, but I thought, no, you're going to hold on to that rear admiral title for a while. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So Dan, only 7 episodes left of Star Trek, the original series.
Man, that's hard to believe. I can remember the first episode we did.
Yeah.
I don't like listening to it, though. It's a little cringy. The editing wasn't that good. You were good.
Yeah, I was going to say everything else was good, just the editing.
The editing sucked, yeah.
So, Dan, I've got some listener comments that came out on Facebook. Mind if we dive into those?
Yeah, let's do it, but I'm a little nervous. Any grammar police show up in this week's comments?
There was one, but I didn't quite understand it, so I'm not going to read it. So
okay, good.
So our good friend Zoom Kwan said, horrid Star Trek episode, great podcast.
Wow.
I think that needs to be said again. Great podcast.
Is Zoom Kwan like your pseudonym online or something?
He comes across as being much smarter than me.
That's not that hard, really.
I'm your friend for years now, so what's that say about you?
I see a demotion in my future. That's what
He's scrubbing the decks. Yeah, this was in response to the Mark of Gideon. And he goes on to say, right after Kirk kisses O'Donna on the bridge, the scene cuts to them coming out of his quarters. Then she starts to feel sick. Yeah, Kirk gave her a quote-unquote injection, no doubt about it.
Now, see, we can't get away with saying that, but somehow our listeners can.
Yeah, well, like I said, they're smarter than us. Craig Combs said Star Trek Season 3, mainstream TV's first attempt to address overpopulation gets bogged down in subplots and collapses from absurdity.
Absolutely true, though, Dana, right?
Yeah, very true. Lynn Price said, the Gideonites seem to be proud people, but wanted to solve their overpopulation problem their own way.
Was it Gideonites or Gidonians? What would it be?
Get out of here? I don't know.
Gonadians?
Bob Thornton said, not one of the better episodes, but still better than today's shows.
Does he mean like the shows that are being made today that are on like Paramount? Is that what he means?
I would took it to mean like all shows, any shows.
Oh, not just Star Trek.
I mean, it could, but it should be more specific then. So.
Yeah, it should be. Okay, where's the grammar guy when you need him? Like to edit that comment to say, be more specific.
Richard Johnson said, Achoo! Thank you for sneezing and causing an epidemic which will kill millions and alleviate my planet's horrible overpopulation. What a silly episode.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Stefan Granito said, truly awful episode. And I know he's talking about the actual Star Trek episode, not our podcast.
Sure. He could not be talking about the podcast now.
And finally, Pete's Stringer said, another poor original series episode in a depressingly bad season. And Dan, I would have to agree with him on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in your agreement of him.
Dan, do you have any comments you want to share?
Dana, we received a bunch of emails today. I just want to share one from Anthony Seclair, and he gives us some suggestions for wrapping up season 3 with a listener poll, which I love this idea. And some of his suggestions for this listener poll include top 5 episodes, the worst episode, best nemesis, kind of like that one, cringeworthy moment, season 3, plenty of those. Best female costume, got a lot of candidates for that one as well.
Yeah.
Best ass kicking, I like that. And among others, Dana, best end line. So I think Anthony's onto something here that we should do some type of listener poll. I'm not sure if he meant just for season 3 or if he meant like for the entire 3 years.
The worst episode's really going to be a tough one for season 3.
Yeah. He even said he'd collate all the ideas for us, which is great.
Wow. That's what we need is help.
Yeah, exactly. In more ways than one. This podcast is being brought to you by North Shore Adult Diapers. North Shore offers reassuringly strong protection for even the heaviest control problems and can keep you dry and confident for up to 12 hours, so you can live your life with freedom and dignity.
Whether you are attending a baseball game, having dinner with friends, getting on a plane, or just sitting back listening to the Damnit Jim podcast, the last thing you want to worry about is incontinence. Don't be trapped at home. Be secure in knowing that North Shore has you covered with a true quality product.
You can even put North Shore's products to the test by requesting up to 6 product samples. And Dana, our listeners can use the code KIRK at checkout to receive $10 off their next order over $50. Go to northshore.com today to place your order or request product samples. This offer can be used only once per customer and may not be combined with other offers.
Okay, Dan, season 3, episode 17, That Which Survives.
Sorry, Dana, that whom survives. You know, I thought we were going to get some comments about the whole whom versus who thing.
Oh, man, because you went off.
Yeah, I was a little, I admit it, I was, a little perturbed, but, what are you going to do?
You really restrained yourself well. So. So the Enterprise is in orbit around a planet.
Really?
On the bridge, Kirk and Spock are debating the planet. Kirk asks Spock if he's referring to it as a ghost planet, and Spock says he's not suggesting anything supernatural.
By the way, Dana, I got to correct you. You made a mistake. He didn't say ghost planet. He said he thought it was a ghost pepper. Because the planet was really hot.
Wow, this is going to be a long episode. So...
Have you ever eaten a ghost pepper? Just like raw ghost pepper?
No, I'm smarter than that, Dan. So.
That sounds horrible, doesn't it?
Spock adds, it's impossible to explain. A planet that young could not have developed an atmosphere in that short of time. Kirk says the planet requires a closer look. He orders McCoy, Sulu, and geologist Diamato to join him in the transporter room.
Uh-oh, Dana, when you got to dig deep in the roster to get a geologist on the ship, that's got to be bad news. One way or another, something's going to happen.
My first thought was I know who's going to die in this episode. They get on the transporter, and just as they start beaming down, a woman appears with some wild eye makeup and an outfit from I Dream of Jeannie.
Yeah, it was weird, Dana. It was kind of weird.
She says, wait, you must not go. She turns to the transporter guy and touches his shoulder. He grabs his chest and falls to the floor, and then the guys on the transporter actually just beam out.
Dana, that has to be, though, the worst death scene I have ever seen in not only Star Trek, but on all of television ever in the history of television.
Wait a minute, worse than the guy that got his neck snapped?
I think so.
Wow.
I mean, because this guy just kind of holds his stomach and then falls over. I mean, she didn't even touch his stomach. Maybe he was saying, it was a ghost pepper.
So Kirk and the team beam to the planet, and the planet starts shaking like an earthquake as soon as they land. They're all like, "Did you see that?" And then the rocks behind them look very much like styrofoam.
Really? No.
And then we see the Enterprise is even shaken. When it stops, Uhura asks Spock,
"What happened?"
"The occipital area of my head seems to have impacted with the arm of the chair."
"No, Mr. Spock. I meant, what happened to us?"
"That we have yet to ascertain."
So there's a woman in a yellow uniform there, and she says, "Mr. Spock, the planet's gone." Back on the planet, the Yamato says the earthquake was like nothing he's ever known before. Kirk tries to hail the Enterprise but can't get through. Sulu checks his tricorder and says, "The Enterprise is gone."
But I have a question for you, though, Dana. Is it an earthquake if it's not on Earth?
Planetquake.
Planetquake. Let's call it a planetquake, yeah.
Let's use the right terminology.
Yeah, not only will the grammar police call, but the freaking geologist police will call. Hold on a second, though, Dana D'Amato. He didn't look like a geologist to me. Did he look like a geologist to you?
What do you want him to look like? Like Indiana Jones?
Yeah. Oh, actually, yeah. That'd be better.
But that's an anthropologist anyways.
We're going to get all kinds of people correcting us now.
No, actually, Indiana Jones, he was a professor of anthropology at Indiana University. And
we should go out with a bang. Just get everybody correcting us.
Okay, the anthropologists. Who do we have so far? We got the grammarotologists. We got the anthropologists, and then we've got the geologists. Who else are we going to piss off tonight?
Well, the night's young. Let's see what we can do. So McCoy says, "It can't just be gone. What the devil does that mean?" And Kirk says, "Gone, as in not here, as in vanished, as in we are stranded."
As in, I wish you were on that ship right now.
So then Sulu says the Enterprise must have blown up. That would explain the high radiation readings.
God, he was pretty nonchalant about it, though, Dana. He didn't really even have that much inflection in his voice, or it didn't even seem like he cared very much, really.
So McCoy says, "Could it be the Enterprise hit the planet? You think that's going to shock the whole planet because of the shake like that?"
No, probably not. Yeah, I think you're right.
Sulu says, "Once in Siberia, there was a meteor so great that it flattened whole forests and was felt as far away as," and Kirk stops him and says, "Mr. Sulu, if I wanted a Russian history lesson, I'd have brought Mr. Chekhov along."
Now, you know that's a true story, though, right?
Yeah, then they think that was one of the ones that wiped out the dinosaurs?
No. That's good.
Oh, that's a different meteor.
Now we pissed off the paleontologists. They're going to be like, these guys are idiots. The meteor he was talking about, though, Dana, was real. It was the Tunguska meteor that hit Siberia in 1908.
And fortunately, Siberia was not a well-populated area.
It, though, flattened about 2,000 square miles, Dana. 2,000 square miles.
That's a lot.
Of like pine forest out there. Yeah, crazy.
So Kirk goes on, "This is a matter of survival, gentlemen. Without the Enterprise, we need food, and we need water, and we need them fast."
Now, you can live longer without food than water, right?
Yes. No, I believe you can live longer without food than you can water.
Yeah. Now, you can drink your own urine and survive.
Yeah. So he sends them off to make an analysis of the planet. Sulu and D'Amato take off. Back on the Enterprise, Scotty reports everything in engineering is good. Uhura says the ship is functioning normally. One death, the transporter officer.
Dana, is it bad of me to be elated at this point?
Spock looks surprised by this and calls sickbay. Dr. Mabenga answers.
Yes, that was another thing I kind of did a little leap of joy about, Dana, was that Mabenga's back.
Spock asks for a report on the transporter officer. Mabenga says, "We're not sure. Dr. Sanchez is performing an autopsy right now." How many doctors they got on this ship now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, maybe they've always had a lot, but we don't see them.
And that's why McCoy's always on the bridge.
Could be. That is a great idea. I was happy he's back. I really wish, Dana, that guy had a bigger part in the series. I think he's a really good character for the little bit we've seen of him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I told you, he is the ship's doctor on Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Dana, I was really hoping Mabenga would go up to the bridge and just slap Spock again. Because Spock, what he said to him was like not very nice. Mabenga goes up to the bridge. Remember that episode, Spock, where I just smacked the crap out of you? Here you go.
Rada, who's sitting in Sulu's chair, says, "What bothers me is the stars, Mr. Spock." And she explains that the stars are not the same as they were.
It doesn't make any sense. But somehow I'd say that in a flash, we've been knocked 1,000 light years away from where we were.
990.7 light years to be exact, Lieutenant.
But that's not possible. Nothing can do that.
Mr. Scott, since we are here, your statement is not only illogical, but also unworthy of refutation.
Dana, did you see the look on her face when he said that? Yeah, I'm calling Mabenga up here, and we're both going to slap you.
So Mabenga calls up to the bridge and reports the cause of death appears to have been cellular disruption. Spock tells Scotty they need to reach the planet at maximum warp speed.
Aye, sir. And maybe a wee bit more. I'll sit on the warp engines myself and nurse them.
That position, Mr. Scott, would not only be unavailing, but also undignified.
This, to me, Dana, is classic Spock from season 2.
Back on the planet, they've determined the vegetation on the planet is inedible. Kirk says there may be some water source with the vegetation. D'Amato says there hasn't been any rainfall ever from what he can tell.
This D'Amato guy, though, Dana, I got to tell you, he's bugging me a little bit. He does not seem like a geologist to me. I don't know what to say. He just doesn't.
Kirk says this might be their home for a while, so he sends everyone off to see what they can find. And I knew once he sent everybody off, somebody was going to die.
Oh, God, I was hoping.
So we see Sulu walking along, and he looks like he's seeing something on his tricorder. He calls Kirk and says, I was making a standard magnetic sweep. From 0, I suddenly got a reading that was off the scale. Then a reverse of polarity, and now I get nothing. Like a door opened and then closed again. And Kirk looks concerned, and next we see D'Amato. He's using the tricorder and checking the soil. He turns, and there's a woman who they saw on the Enterprise. She says, do not be afraid. And he says, I'm not. Geological disturbances don't frighten me.
She's not a geological disturbance, is she?
Maybe he's talking about what happened in his pants. And she says, don't be afraid. And just the fact that she's saying that so many times, that would give me concern.
Yeah.
So she reaches for him, and as he's backing up, and she says, I am for D'Amato. He pulls his communicator, and she says, don't call your friends. And right then we cut to McCoy, who's calling Kirk on the communicator and says, Jim, I just got a life form reading of tremendous intensity. Suddenly it was just there. All levels were normal. Then I get this biological surge of life registering. Now it's gone.
And Kirk says, actually, that was just me. We had beans, for lunch, and there was a surge of something.
Kirk asks McCoy which direction it was coming from. McCoy gives the coordinates and says, that's D'Amato's section. Kirk tries calling D'Amato, but gets no response. He calls Sulu and tells him to meet at D'Amato's section.
Yeah, you go first, Sulu, and we'll wait for you to report back.
We'll wait to hear if we hear another scream. So as everybody comes running up, we see D'Amato's leg sticking out from behind a rock.
Boy, he didn't last long, did he, Dana?
No. So Kirk takes his phaser out. McCoy asks what he's doing, and Kirk says, digging a grave.
Wait, we don't have this as a setting for a phaser, do we? The digging a grave?
Yeah, we don't. We had the outline of a dead person, body outline.
Yeah, we had that, yeah.
So this is a new setting.
New setting, gravedigger. Okay, I like it. All we know is D'Amato's dead. It's very sad, Dana. It's very sad because the one guy who could make pizza is gone.
And with all those rocks around there, they could make like stone-fired pizza.
Oh, God, Dana. Yeah. I love pizza, Dana. I got to say, I love pizza.
I do too, Dan.
Yeah. What's your favorite pizza?
Well, I love Lou Malnati's.
You think Chicago-style pizza would be your favorite?
Yeah, that's my favorite. But I mean, I'm not as big on New York pizza.
Yeah. I
like sausage, pepperoni, mushrooms, black olives.
Yeah, all those are good for me too, yeah.
Just don't put fish on my pizza. I don't want anchovies.
No. I think it's about the cheese, though. You get that really dense, stringy, cheese. Get the little pools of fat in there. Oh, my God. Grease.
And the sauce has got to be right.
Yeah. White sauce? No, Dana. No white sauce. It's like white chocolate. It's not real. It doesn't count.
My wife and I order this Mediterranean pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Cheese and artichoke and chicken, and it's really healthy. It's pretty tasty. I was surprised.
Pizza's not supposed to be healthy, Dana. If you want healthy, just eat an artichoke,
Yeah, okay.
Oh, but pizza, like wood-fired pizza, oh man, Dana, good stuff.
How about like a Hawaiian pizza.
Occasionally.
Okay, so Kirk orders soup.
Man, the ramble jar has to come out on that.
How are you going to say we got to that point? Because the one guy that could make pizzas?
Oh, yeah, that's how it was. I already forgot. You know, it's because D'Amato. Yeah, he was the pizza maker on the ship. What kind of pizza do you boys like? All right, let's move on. What I don't know how. Once again, Dana, I apologize. This was absolutely my fault.
Yeah. Then McCoy asks, "I wonder what killed him." And Kirk says, "I don't know, but something or someone did." But I mean, McCoy knows what killed him.
Yeah, that's true. He does. Yeah.
And Kirk was right there when he said it.
He was,
So-
but he was. You know what he was thinking about?
Pizza.
Not going to get another pizza.
Who's the next Italian on the ship that can make me pizza?
Now let's just be clear. You don't have to be Italian to make pizza. Not every Italian knows how to make pizza. I'm only half Italian, but I do know how to make a whole pizza.
So back on the Enterprise, Rada says, "We're holding warp 8.4, sir. If we can maintain it, our estimated time of arrival is 11 1/2 solar hours." And Spock says, 11.37 hours, Lieutenant. I wish you could be more precise.
My God, Dana, he is being an ass.
Where's Mabinga when you need him?
Exactly. Yeah.
So Scotty calls from engineering and says, "The ship feels wrong to me." Scotty says, "I cannot put it into words." And Spock replies, "I suggest you avoid emotionalism and simply keep your instruments correct." Scotty's like, "I got an instrument for you." On the planet, Kirk is finishing the Grave of Stones. We see there is a crude marker with D'Amato's name on it. Dan, did they write his name with the phaser, or was that a magic marker in Kirk's pocket?
I don't know. I was wondering that same thing. Maybe it was like a piece of charcoal or something. But where would you get that? I don't really know.
Yeah, I just kind of took it for granted, but made me wonder.
Granite or granite? Granted or igneous? Sorry. It was supposed to be a rock joke, Dana. Oh, God. Now the rock people are going to really get mad at me.
You know, it's not funny to make fun of rocks. You know, rocks are very important to us.
Rocks are rocks, too. Rocks are people, too.
I was a rock once, and people made fun of me, and I didn't really appreciate it.
You think that's how rock people talk?
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah, so rock people.
And the rock people are like,
"Oh, well, yeah, well, you Star Trek people." Beaming aboard, Scotty.
Okay, back on track.
sorry.
Okay, so McCoy says, "Until we know what killed him, none of us are safe."
But they know what killed him. His cells were disrupted.
But they don't really know what it was that killed him or whom.
Or whom? Jesus Christ.
So we go back to the Enterprise, and Scotty is walking around engineering. He looks, I don't know, uncertain, unhappy.
Yeah, concerned. Yeah.
And he goes over to one of the engineers, and Scotty says, "Watkins, check the bypass valve on the matter-antimatter reaction chamber. Make sure it's not overheating." And Watkins points to the control panel he's at. He says, "But Mr. Scott, the board shows correct." And Scotty says, little peeved, goes, "I didn't ask you to check the board, lad." Watkins goes off and he goes into another room and checks another panel. Watkins crosses to a panel, and then this woman appears. And she addresses by name. She says, "Watkins, John B." And he asks who she is, but she just says, "My name is not important." And so Watkins calls out and says, "There's a strange woman here whom knows the whole layout of the Enterprise." Scotty'd be like, "Everybody that's on the ship knows the entire plans of the Enterprise." So then we see Scotty react and then hear Watkins scream. So when Scotty comes into the room, Watkins is on the floor, and we see the woman in the background watching. Her form suddenly changes as she kind of condenses into a thick black line. Then the line shrinks again and then disappears. It was kind of a neat effect.
I did like that effect. I like the music that played with it, too. It was this kind of creepy, mysterious music. Yeah.
So Scotty calls to the bridge and tells Spock that Watkins is dead. On the planet, Kirk is using the tricorder. He asks Sulu for conclusions. And Sulu says the basic substance of this planet is an alloy of dibernium osmium.
Sure.
Then he suggests they get some rest, and tomorrow they'll continue their search for food and water. Sulu says he'll take the first watch. Kirk tells him to set the tricorder for automatic distress. On the bridge, Spock gets a report from Mabinga that Watkins died from the same thing that killed the transporter dude.
But as to the cause, well, your guess is as good as mine.
My guess, Doctor, would be valueless. I suggest we refrain from guessing and find some facts.
So we go back to the planet. Sulu turns back and says, "Who are you?" As the woman again. She says, "That is not important. You are Lieutenant Sulu, the helmsman of the Enterprise." And then he says, "Who killed D'Amato?" She says, "You do not understand. I have come for you." Sulu holds the phaser and says, "Stop or I'll shoot."
But Dana, he says, "I don't want to have to kill a woman."
Yeah.
What a stupid line. How about she's an alien?
But she still looks like a woman.
Who's trying to kill him?
He doesn't know that.
I think he's already surmised that she killed D'Amato.
As he's backing away, he trips over a rock and she steps forward, kind of looking like a robot. And then she reaches down as Sulu tries to scramble to his feet. She touches his arm as he runs away from her and he falls down again. Just then Kirk and McCoy come around the corner of the rock and Kirk points his phaser at her. She reaches out and her hand touches Kirk's shoulder, but nothing happens. Kirk says, "How can you destroy others and not me?" She says, "I don't want to destroy." And Kirk says, "Why are you trying to kill us?" And she says, "Only Sulu. I mean you no harm." Kirk goes, "Oh, okay, in that case."
Well, why don't you try McCoy here? Touch him all over and see what happens.
Yeah. So Kirk steps in front of her and says, "No." And she backs away and she acts all stunned. And then she turns into a line again and disappears. And Sulu says, "How can such people be, Captain? Such evil. And she's so beautiful."
Oh, God. That was dumb.
Yeah, they brought Shakespeare back for this.
Exactly right. Once again.
So back on the Enterprise, we see Uhura flipping buttons on her console. She tells Spock that security sweeps are complete, no evidence of the intruder. So Rada says, "Speed has increased to warp 8.8. So Spock calls engineering and Scotty says, "I see it. It's a power surge. Reduce speed until I can locate the trouble." And Rada says the speed is still increasing. And Scotty reports, "The emergency bypass control of the matter-antimatter integrator is fused."
What? Fused, Dana. Fused.
"The engines are running wild. There's no way to get at them. We should reach maximum overload in about 15 minutes.
I would calculate 14.87 minutes, Mr. Scott.
Those few seconds will not make any difference, Mr. Spock, because you and I and the rest of the crew will no longer be here to bandy it back and forth. This thing is going to blow up. And there's nothing in the universe can stop it.
Oh, am I broadcasting to the whole ship? Oh, shit."
People in the halls are just running and screaming at the top of their lungs, "We're all gonna die! And we don't have any pizza!"
In engineering, Spock is next to Scotty as Scotty says, "It's useless." And Spock says, "Sabotage." Spock asks about an access tube that leads to the matter-antimatter reaction chamber. And Scotty says, "There is such an access, but it's not meant to be used while the integrator operates." And Spock says, "Still, we might be able to shut off the fuel at that point." So they go back and forth about how dangerous it is. And Spock says, "If we don't try, everyone will be dead on the ship." And Scotty finally agrees and says, "He'll do the job. I know at every millimeter of that system." On the planet, Kirk asks if Sulu is ready to move around. He says if the lady comes back looking to kill one of them, the other two can run interference. On the Enterprise, Scotty has two engineers help him get into the tube. They actually had to practically lift him into the tube.
They did, yeah. And slide him in like he'd been slid into a pizza oven or something. "I know the pizza's up there somewhere. I hid one myself. I'm going to get the last pizza."
Should be just about done. See him in the tube just woofing on pizza.
"I got me haggis pizza."
Yeah, that's something I wouldn't get on pizza. So inside, we see this like blue lightning flashing just over Scotty's head. And he says, I've sealed off the aft end of the service crawlway. He says, and I positioned explosive separator charges to blast me clear of the ship if I rupture the magnetic bottle.
But Dana, if that ruptures, doesn't the whole ship just blow up anyway?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Oh, so what he's done is he gets himself sent free of the ship in probably like a little life pod, so he's okay.
Yeah.
Just eating his pizza there in the life pod where the other ones are blown to kingdom come.
So he says,
I'm so close to the flow now, and it feels like ants crawling all over my body.
Mr. Scott, I suggest you refrain from any further subjective descriptions. You now have 10 minutes and 19 seconds in which to perform your task.
God, we've had a little bit of an ant problem in our house recently.
oh, have you really? Have you put like bounce sheets down?
Bounce.
Yeah, like the dryer sheets? Yeah.
What? So they can do their laundry? What are you saying, Dana? I don't understand.
No, for some reason it repels bugs.
Really?
Yeah. Haven't you ever heard like when you go outside, you can rub your clothes and your skin with the bounce sheets and you won't get bitten by mosquitoes and stuff?
I have never heard that, Dana. Never.
Yeah.
So this sounds like I'm putting this dangerous bug-killing chemical in my dryer so it gets all over my clothes.
But it makes them smell fresh and static free. So it's worth it.
But if that's true, then wouldn't just putting it in the dryer and getting it on my clothes then, eliminate bugs from wanting to be near me? I don't think that's happening. I'll have to try to put it by the ants, though. I'll see. I'll try. I'll report it back next week. See what happens. Go down there like the dryer sheet's gone, and they leave a little message. It didn't work, asshole.
Scotty says, if the magnetic flow jumps, you must jettison me. So Scotty reports he's removed the access panel and we see lights flashing all over his face. He says, got static electric charges dancing around on the instruments.
He should have used a bounce dryer sheet. Get rid of that static. And any ants that might be in there.
So Spock calls Scotty for an update.
You have 8 minutes, 41 seconds.
I know what time it is. I don't need a bloomin' cuckoo clock.
Finally, someone gives it back to Spock,
Yeah, about time. So back on the planet, Sulu is reading the tricorder. He comments he's getting that strange magnetic sweep again. Then there's the lady again standing in front of them. Kirk asks, who have you come for this time? She says, for you, James T. Kirk, commander of the Enterprise. You must not penetrate this station.
So she really does know Kirk.
Kirk says, you want to kill me? And she says, no. And her eyelids flutter and she looks upset. And she says, I am sent. And Kirk asks, by whom? Or is it who?
I am sent by an English professor. Kill you.
To correct your grammar, Kirk asks if there are others, and Lucira says, there are no more. Kirk asks, are you lonely?
He's trying to do some kind of weird, like, psychological razzle-dazzle to get her to explode. He's trying to blow her up again, like he's done other computers, right?
So Lucira pulls back and then turns into the two-dimensional stick again and disappears. Suddenly, a rock slides and reveals a doorway. McCoy says, we've been led here. And Kirk says, whatever civilization exists on this planet is in there. And without the Enterprise, gentlemen, the only source of food and water is in there.
Well, he could eat D'Amato, right?
Yeah.
That's a one of spicy ensign. Remember that commercial, though? That's a one of spicy meatball.
Oh, yeah.
What was that, a Tums commercial? What was that? Rolaids? What was it?
I was thinking Chef Boyardee. Oh, man, when I was a kid and we'd see those Chef Boyardee commercials, I'd be like, oh, I want to get Chef Boyardee. I want to get Chef Boyardee. Finally, my mom bought me a can of that stuff, and I had it, and it sucked. I was like, Mom, what'd you do to this? She's like, that's Chef Boyardee. That's why I never buy it for you. And it had like little tiny meatballs in it that just tasted like sawdust.
They even have a recipe section to their page. Here's what it says. 1, open can of Chef Boyardee. 2, dump can in trash. 3, eat anything else in your kitchen and it will taste better, including the dog food. Okay, off of the Chef Boyardee.
On the Enterprise, Spock checks on Scotty. Scotty says, I'm going to try to cut the magnetic flow. But if the probe doesn't precisely match the magnetic flow, there'll be an explosion. Rod reports they are now at warp 13. She goes, and I just jettisoned Scotty.
He's waving at us.
Is that pizza he's got with him? Spock checks the computer, then tells Scotty to reverse polarity on his magnetic probe. And we can see he can't get the probe apart, and he says, it's stuck. Push the button. Scotty keeps struggling to get the probe apart, and he keeps saying, push the button. He says, I'm dead anyway. Spock keeps saying, continue with your job, or I'll come there and stick that probe someplace. Finally, Scotty gets the probe reversed.
Don't push the button. Don't push the button.
Move your hand away from the button.
I got the pizza, I tell you. If you don't push the button, I'll share the pizza.
And Uhura says, magnetic force is steady, and we hear the engine slowing down. And Spock says, Mr. Scott, you have accomplished your task. And Scotty sighs and says, you might at least say thank you. So Spock says, what is it in you humans that requires an overwhelming display of emotion? And Scotty is probably thinking, I wish we'd blown up. Back on the planet, the trio enter the cave and see a square cube overhead with colors rotating through it. As they approach, Losira shows up. They form a circle and they move around her, and a second Losira appears. So the men shift to cover one another, and a third Losira appears. So Kirk says the computer must be programming these replicas. So suddenly Spock and a security guard beam down, and Kirk yells, the computer, destroy it. The guard pulls his phaser and fires at the cube overhead, and then the lights slow down and the three Losiras disappear. And then a vision of Losira comes up on a nearby wall, and it's a recorded message. She says, my fellow Kardashians, I'm sorry, Galandans. She says a disease destroyed them, and she is the last of the advanced force. And she says, I will set the outpost controls on automatic. The computer will defend against all life forms but our own. My fellow Kalandans, I, Lysora, wish you well. Kirk says the computer was too perfect. It projected so much of Losira's personality into the replica that it felt regret, guilt at killing.
No, it didn't. It was still going to kill all of them.
And he says she must have been a remarkable woman. And McCoy says, and beautiful.
Oh, God, come on.
Spock says, beauty is transitory, Doctor. Kirk says, I don't agree with you, Mr. Spock. And Spock says, indeed, Captain. And then Kirk looks around and says, beauty survives. And Dan, that's how the show ends.
Dana, you have some information about this episode you want to share.
Yeah, Dan. Losira was played by Lee Merriweather. I forgot about this. She was Miss America 1955. She might be remembered by some for her role on the Time Tunnel, as well as her role in the Batman movie, where she played Catwoman.
Oh, she wasn't actually in the television series, just in the movie.
Yeah. So she did a lot of TV, and she made a lot of made-for-TV movies, and she had one reoccurring role on Barnaby Jones with her friend Buddy Epson from 1973 to 1980.
Wow.
Dan, she's still alive at age 88.
Oh, we got to get her on the show, Dana. I grew up next to a Miss America.
Really?
Yeah, I really did, Dana. She was Miss America like 1968 or something like that. I don't remember the exact year, but yeah.
Dan, do you have any other information you want to add about this show?
Yeah, Dana, DC Fontana actually came up with this story idea, but she was so frustrated with how the story premise had been changed in the kind of editing process that she took her name off the script and used a pen name that she used to use by the name of Michael Richards, because she was so upset with how this episode turned out. I wonder what she would have done to change it, or what the original episode would have been like.
Well, Dan, I read that in the original story, Losira caused crew members to fight amongst themselves, and the character Losira was also more brutal in her treatment of the people on the Enterprise.
Okay, so that was the difference. All right.
Dan, do you have any themes and dilemmas for this week?
Yeah, Dana, I do. The last message that Losira leaves for people from her planet to see if they ever were to get to this world that they were defending was that she was sorry that she wouldn't be able to greet them when they arrived, because she and all the other people of that expeditionary force or whatever they were, were dead. But thinking about the human race, like, what would be the last message we would want to leave for people before we went extinct? What would the human race want to be known for? I think as humans, what the message we might want to leave is where we left the extra pizza. That's probably what we'd want people to know. Dana, how about you? What was a dilemma you saw on the show?
Well, Dan, I think this is the one of the perfect examples of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. At one point, Scotty and Spock are talking, and Spock says, we have to do this. And Scotty says, well, you could actually die doing this. And Spock's response is, well, we're all going to die anyways. So, to save, they're going to risk their own life. And Scotty's the one that risks his life. So I just thought that was interesting that this shows up early, and it's not Spock or Kirk that does it, but it's Scotty.
Dana, what was the best part you had for this episode?
Dan, I love that Scotty was so involved in this, and Scotty saves the day. What about you? Do you have a best part?
Yeah, Spock being in that bad mood for the entire episode, but his sarcastic remarks, I would say, were the best of season 3 and maybe even the entire series, and he had so many of them in just this one episode. How about a best part for you?
The two stories that were going on, the away team and then the crew on the Enterprise trying to find their way back, reminiscent of a couple other earlier episodes, but I liked it. It built a lot of tension. There was, things weren't real tense on the planet. They were very tense on the ship, and if things weren't real tense on the ship, they were tense on the planet. So it really kept the action moving. Do you have another best part for us, Dan?
I do. This kind of is the other side of the coin of Spock's kind of snarky comments, were the reactions that Uhura, Scotty, and Rada had to Spock, whether it was an eye roll or something that they may have said. Dana, how about a worst part for you?
Well, Dan, after you were praising Spock's consistent comments, that's one of my worst parts, is that it was just so much during the show. I love it, his comments. I just wish they could have spread it out over a few episodes or 2 episodes even. Dan, how about a worst part for you?
While the actor who plays Lieutenant Rada had some great facial expressions, when Spock was telling her how she needs to be more accurate, what was up with her hair, Dana? That was the strangest hair I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know if it was a wig or was it real hair. It just looked really weird to me.
Her whole look just looked unusual.
Well, she is still alive, so let's get her on the show and ask her. How about a worst part for you?
I hate that they explain everything at the end. They just tried to wrap it up nicely, but they didn't explain why the planet existed, that, why the rocks were so strong. They didn't explain, that had nothing to do with the race. It's like it was 2 separate things. That bothered me a lot. Do you have another worst part for us, Dan?
Dana, if she could hurtle the ship 1,000 light years, 997.8 light years away, if she could fuse the circuits, if she could kill somebody just by touching them, why didn't she just destroy the ship when it came into orbit? I mean, she was a defense mechanism. Just blow it up. It didn't make any sense to me, Dana. So, Dana, what happened on This Date in History?
Dan, this first aired on January 24th, 1969. The #1 song in the U.S., I Heard It Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye.
Wow, that one has stuck around for a long time.
The UK changed. They went from Obla Dee, Obla Da by Marmalade to Fleetwood Mac, Albatross. Also, Dan, on that date, Spain's President Francisco Franco decreed a 3-month state of emergency and suspended 5 civil rights, allowing police to search without a warrant, hold prisoners indefinitely without charges, prevent public assemblies, and to exile dissidents. Not a whole lot more happened on the 24th, but on the 26th, Dan, the King, Elvis Presley, stepped into American studios in Memphis, Tennessee, recording Long Black Limousine. The sessions yielded the popular and critically acclaimed singles Suspicious Minds, In the Ghetto, and Kentucky Rain.
Wow.
So, Dan, January 27th, there was a meeting to discuss the feasibility of a space station as a major post-Apollo human spaceflight program that was held at NASA headquarters. This podcast is being brought to you by North Shore. North Shore offers premium incontinence products that can improve your quality of life. Managing incontinence can feel like a no-win scenario. Local drugstores often have a lack of options or sizes or have cheap products that leak. North Shore is way different.
Dana, incontinence affects over 13 million people in the United States alone. I have a close friend with multiple sclerosis who uses North Shore diapers to help him lead a normal life.
North Shore products can empower you to live your life on your terms by providing maximum absorbency that allows you to be dry and confident. It allows you to be you. And Dan, our listeners can use the code KIRK at checkout to receive $10 off their next order over $50. Go to northshore.com today.
So, Dana, how about if we get to the counts?
I would love that, Dan.
What about the dead crewman count, Dana?
Dan, it was an exciting week. Not one, not two, but 3 dead crewmen. That puts us up to 52.5.
Wow. All right, Dana, how about the shirtless Kirk Ripshire Kirk count?
Not this week, Dan. We're still at 20.
The he's dead count.
Didn't say it, so we are still at 22.
How about I'm a doctor and not a pizza maker?
Nothing this week, so we are still at 9.
What about the supreme being count?
I'm putting that at 0 and leaving us at 12.
Okay, and we did have 2 violations of the Prime Directive this week. So I still get my popcorn, is that true?
Please explain one of them to me.
Okay, all right. So we didn't have any, right?
Yep. So violations of the Prime Directive is also at 12.
How about the taking over the Enterprise count?
Now, I'm going to say there was 1 because the Enterprise was thrown and the warp drives were controlled or destroyed. So do you want to count that?
Yeah, I have 1 as well for the same reason.
That puts us at 18.
Finally, who's commanding the Enterprise, Dana?
Only one person other than Kirk was commanding the Enterprise this week, Dan, and that was Mr. Spock.
What does that leave us with?
52.
Dana, you know what? I made a lot of fun of this episode, but I got to say, I really enjoyed this episode, maybe even more than you did. For season 3, for me, one of the better episodes, Dana.
Yeah, I would actually agree with you. I mean, there's a few things I wasn't crazy about, but nothing I hated. Well, it's not one of my all-time favorites. I would definitely watch this one again. Dan, what do we have next week?
Dana, next week we have the Lights of Zatar. Once again, Dana, I had a great time talking about this episode. I know it was my fault that I dragged us into so many, distractions and getting us off track and all that. I do apologize for that, but hey, I had a lot of fun talking with you about this episode tonight, Dana.
Dan, I say this every week, but it's always fun and a great time to talk with you about Star Trek. We do make fun of these shows and we laugh a lot. I think our listeners appreciate that we're able to laugh at some things, including ourselves, there's a lot to laugh at there.
If they could only see us, Dana, if they could only see us.
But we are very thankful for all our friends who communicate with us. Remember, you can reach us via Facebook or email, and our phone number, Dan?
That number, Dana, for the Damnit Jim Hotline is 509-676-6298.
Till we meet again, live long and prosper.
Thanks once again for listening to Damnit Jim, the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at damnitjimpodcast@gmail.com or join the discussion on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or X. You can also call the Damnit Jim hotline at 509-676-6298. Enjoy the rest of your week, and as always, remember to live long and prosper. This has been a Ramble Jar production.